One of the hallmarks of the early AI is that it would tell you something, but not credit what it had trained on in order to tell you that. It was all based on real people's work, but those people were never credited. You can't have AI without source material. And you can't have the source material be public without traffic and compensation.
Hello, and welcome to AI Curious. My name is Jeff Wilser. I'm a journalist, I'm a human, and I'm curious about AI. And let's start with a blunt question. What happens when AI can read the whole internet, but the internet stops volunteering? Because right now, we are in a strange new phase of the web. For the last 2-ish decades, there was this informal bargain. Google crawls your site, and in return, you get traffic. Not perfect, not always fair, but it was an exchange of value. With generative AI, a lot of publishers and a lot of writers feel like that bargain got broken. The AI systems trained on mountains of public writing, often without asking, often without crediting, and often without compensating. And now, as AI summaries become a default layer between readers and the open web, the fear is that the incentive to publish in public gets weaker and weaker. So what do we do about that? Do we just accept that? Do we do licensing deals one by one? Do we block the crawlers? Do we move our best writing into private spaces, Discords, group chats, newsletters, where it's harder to scrape? That's at heart what today's episode is about. And we're joined by someone who is not just theorizing from the sidelines. He is in the arena dealing with this in real time, and he is one of the most important voices in this battle. My guest is Tony Stubblebine, the CEO of Medium. Now, Medium is obviously one of the most important writing platforms on the internet, and Tony has been one of the more candid voices on what he calls AI's broken social contract with the web. In this conversation, Tony lays out a simple framework he calls the 3 C's: consent, credit, and compensation. We talk about why publishers are pushing back, what a realistic internet standard for AI licensing could look like, something that doesn't just reward the biggest players, and why the future might not be dead internet, but something more specific. A dead public internet where the real human stuff retreats into a smaller, more private communities. And then we end somewhere I did not fully expect, a kind of pragmatic optimism. Tony argues that all of this pressure may force a new equilibrium because AI needs human source material and humans need incentives to keep producing it. If you're a writer, an editor, publisher, founder, creative, or just someone trying to understand what the internet turns into next, I think you'll find this one relevant and refreshingly non-binary, not good or evil. So with that, please enjoy my conversation with Tony Stubblebine, CEO of Medium. Tony, welcome to AI Curious.
Jeff, I'm glad to be here.
So you, I believe, have said that AI has broken a social contract with the internet. Let's start there. What does that mean? What is the contract that we have with the internet, and how is AI breaking that contract?
I mean, it means get your popcorn because there's a bunch of fighting going on between big companies and small companies and medium-sized companies like the one I run. Sometimes on the internet, companies can be really collaborative because there's a natural exchange of value. And in this case, there was no exchange of value, actually something worse than that, where the AI companies kind of came out of the blue having scraped and consumed and trained on a lot of content from every media site, including Medium, where millions of people write, without offering anything in exchange. And so what we're used to, which is kind of the basic social contract of Western civilization, is that if you get something, you give something, right? And we are specifically in that relationship with Google, where they crawl our sites. In exchange, we get traffic from people who search on Google. That wasn't happening with the first version of OpenAI or whatnot. In fact, our view is quite a bit worse, is that they were making money, and in exchange, we were facing an onslaught of spam and slop that is costs us money to fight back. And so what happens? What does a company like Medium or the New York Times or Reddit or Quora, what do they do in that situation? And that's, I think, kind of the drama of the internet right now, is that we're not going to do nothing. And so we have to respond to that.
Can you kind of give the blunt version of what OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google and
Yeah.
that those companies, what did they do wrong in your view? What was the chief problem and crime?
I think the simplest way to frame it is this, what we call the 3 Cs, which actually had been used in other places before we started using it. First is consent. Ask for permission. Allow us to say no. The other is credit. So, one of the hallmarks of the early AI is that it would tell you something, but not tell you, not credit what it had trained on in order to tell you that. The sort of generative AI was all based on like real people's work, but those people were never credited. And then the third is compensation, which could be money, but I think the Google search has shown that most of the internet would rather just get free traffic. Like, we know what to do with free traffic, but some sort of compensation in there. And if you're not doing that, then I think the AI companies should expect to be cut off. And in fact, they have. There's been a retreat from the public internet that had allowed them to do this. And so I think they're not going to be able maybe to do it as much in the future. And then there's like tricky stuff where the AI crawlers that come to sites, it's like sometimes they get blocked. But if one of the big services that a lot of us use, Cloudflare, they allow us to, if we catch that it's a crawler, to just start poisoning the results with weird gobbledygook, right? and it's like, that's the kind of world where, that's why I said, get your popcorn. Like if we don't come to a collaborative solution, like, it's going to be a fight.
A point you've raised before that, hey, given the incentives we have now, which are like questionable at best to write on the internet, you predicted we would see a retreat of writers writing in more private forms. Yeah. So can you elaborate a little more on that? And are we starting to see that? What evidence do we have that's actually happening?
And like, no credit to me for saying this. Like, we had a dinner of what we call interesting people in New York, where we like arranged all the AI people we could find, people building AI products, people from media, journalists covering culture. Everyone agreed there's a retreat from the public sphere. And it started before AI. It started because Twitter just got so toxic that people realized, I'd rather be somewhere else. And so, like, if you start with Twitter as the trend, there's an exodus from Twitter. And a lot of people think that exodus went to Blue Sky or went to Threads. I would point out that a lot of it went to group text messaging and Discord. Safer, more private spaces. And so then I think that's accelerating because Google is sending everyone about half as much traffic. It's like what I say. They say something different, but
half the traffic. So you're saying half the traffic from Google now?
Yeah. Well, the way we defended our traffic, but the click-through rate dropped in half. And that it dropped in half when the AI search summaries showed up. So essentially, half of the traffic we used to get now goes to an AI search summary. So, so half of the incentive that they were providing to prop up this global town square is what some people call these social media platforms, this idea that I want to contribute to some global collective intelligence, like one of the original inspiring ideas behind the internet. Well, the incentive got a lot weaker for that. And so now people are thinking, what about something else? What about trust? What about connection? What about real community? And those things are kind of better done in private spaces. And look, there's that's a kind of a natural reaction to the changing incentives. And it's also a real threat to the emerging AI world, because what we see from generative AI is that it is relying on access to real, to information from somewhere else, right? Kind of it's the way that AI search works is that there's an LLM that does all the generative language, but it pulls source material, sort of a RAG approach is what it's called, right? And then summarizes all of that. Well, if it can't pull the right source material, if like the product review doesn't exist, or if the product reviews are themselves all AI generated and the real product reviews are hidden in some private Discord, then it becomes suddenly a lot less effective.
A brief digression here. What does that internet look like if we follow that to its logical conclusion and we become more and more kind of cloistered off private conversations? Sketch that out. What does that world look like online?
I think I've switched to be more optimistic, and I think this might even be jarring for this podcast, where we started out being like, these people are crooks. They've broken the social contract. F them, right? It's like, actually, now that you think about it and now that we're in it, there was already something kind of unhealthy about the internet. Like before AI,
that's a massive understatement. I would agree with this. Yes.
Okay.
Kind of something unhealthy. Yes.
First, right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's because it's like, it's alien. It's like, it's dehumanizing to, perform in public, but not for other humans. You're performing for the algorithm. Like, how much do you change what you say so that it goes viral, so that it does well in search results, right? Like you lose track of your audience in a way that, I would say is often unhealthy. And so what we're kind of rediscovering is that smaller spaces are much more connected. They're much more communal. They're much more, you can see the person in some way. And there's a person that you're speaking to rather than an algorithm. And we've had these, this is like a pendulum of the internet. This is maybe Usenet in the early days. This maybe maybe this is what AOL was for people.
Or even like I'm old enough to remember BBS boards, right? BBS, technically it's public, but it feels very kind of private and communal.
I'm of the age where I was on a BBS.
Oh, me too. I still know my names.
That's right. But I met those people in person, right? Yeah. And that's not true of I've had, I think my biggest hit on Medium had 2 million views, right? It's like, I don't know any of those people.
Yeah.
We didn't meet at the park, right?
Yeah. So to what extent is Medium shifting or evolving to adapt to that potential future for a more private world?
So many ways. Although I think probably we're actually more strongly responding to something else, which is I don't know, the way I put it just like a few minutes ago to someone I was talking to at work is if we don't champion writing, who's going to champion writing? Every time, there's always some trend in media to pivot to video. And here we are, people that just love the value of writing. This isn't just we're championing writers. We're championing the idea that everyone should be writing as much as possible. And so we had been looking at Medium and we've been like, wow, we've really set the bar really high. To do well on Medium, it means you have to have written something that you feel comfortable putting out to the entire public, that you think it's going to withstand scrutiny, and that it's worthy of being read by millions of people, right? Well, there's a lot of things I have to say and that you have to say that aren't that, right? Or maybe
17 people should read, not 2 million people in my case.
That too. And the way it comes up at work is actually the founder of Medium, Evan Williams, who's I just call him my boss. He's the chairman of the board. And I'm the replacement who took over when he stepped down as CEO. We will say to each other, a lot of our best writing was just to each other, right? And so that idea that how do we make it possible to write to 2 people or 3 people or 17, or to write without that public scrutiny, or to work something out, or to say something that is not safe to say in public? How can we do that? So we're already essentially saying okay, what you see on Medium right now is the right edge of where we want to be. And we're not going to go further than that. We're not trying to we're not about the creator economy. We're about the expert economy and everything amateur to the left of that, right? And because it's just I see 0.1% of the world could make a living as a writer, and 99.9% of the world should be writing. That's who I want to talk to. That's who I want to help express themselves. That's how I want to get their life experiences out into the world, to connect and help some collective intelligence that could be global or it could be just communal. So we had like, this is our write edge, and then how can we make it possible for more and more people to write? And that means for us, it means publications, which are kind of like, think of it like a subreddit, like a group of people with a shared interest. And then we have essentially private social network, private publishing in the works. But, I hate to give vaporware. I would say on Monday, the beta testers started using it for the first time. So I don't imminent feels like too strong of a word.
You heard it here first, folks. On Tuesday, it's hard rollout. It's happening.
Right.
So we started with kind of the core problem that you articulated with AI and kind of how they train these models in the 3Cs. Let's pivot a bit to solutions. What do you, one obvious possible solution out there is the kind of licensing deals, the kind New York Times, AP, and Reddit have used. You, as I understand it, have a different framework in mind. Talk a bit about why you might not feel those solutions as the right way to go and what you'd prefer to see instead.
Yeah, I feel like we're doing the AI companies a big favor by just handing them the solution. And it's like, I'd say I resent that they didn't lead with this. But the solution is that there has to be an internet standard that governs how to pay for content. And if the AI companies are going to consume it and use it, they have to give some form of compensation. And this should not be done through ad hoc negotiations, and it should not be run by a single company. So right now, I think Cloudflare is a company I really respect for what they're doing in AI.
Can you quickly, for listeners who aren't as plug into that, describe what Cloudflare is doing with AI right now?
This is one of those companies that if you host a website, you know what they are. And if you don't, you would never know. But essentially, they're one of our service providers that sit in between us and every person in the world, kind of filtering what can get through and sometimes caching it so that it gets delivered to you faster. But as a result, they often are in the place where they're best able to block the AI crawlers for us. And they've done this thing, which I think is the right thing to do, which is they've said the AI companies will not come to the table unless we first force them. And so they first made it really easy to block all of them all at once at a really massive scale, because Cloudflare is like a company that we all use. And I think I totally agree with that sentiment. And then they said, and now that we've done that, we will negotiate for payment on behalf of our customers. And that's where I think that's the best current available option, but it doesn't make sense that we would have vendor lock-in for this type of negotiation. And so more recently, and this might be what you're working up to, there's finally an internet standard called the Really Simple Licensing Standard that attempts to have a standardized way of communicating. Here are our license rules, and here's how to contact us. And eventually what that standard is working up to is essentially a licensing body that handles all of the financial transactions in the way that, if you've ever heard of ASCAP on the music side, if your barbershop is playing music, that musician is making money, and the organization that kind of makes that happen is ASCAP, I think. And so we want the same thing for AI.
Is the idea, just to be very simple with this, that RSL is going to create some agreed upon standard fee or percentage that is true for all publications? And so it doesn't require, so if you're a blog or if you're a medium size or a gigantic publication, you don't have to worry about trying to put your elbows out and negotiate on behalf of yourself. It's already set for everyone.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly right.
How does that work can you kind of elaborate on how it works for an actual writer versus a publication or platform, right? Because for Medium, you guys have done an incredible job of being a platform for millions of writers. If I'm an actual writer, and I have been at times a writer on Medium, how would my work and my engagement and my traffic be impacted by using something like a RSL?
Yeah. So the intention, and this is kind of, I think the steps are, first, you have to get the attention of these AI companies and bring them to the table. But the intention is, first of all, to finally provide consent that you as a writer should be able to opt in or opt out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Medium's intention, this isn't actually true of the other social media companies, but our intention is to negotiate on behalf of our writers or to collect money on behalf of our writers and just pass it through. And so my CFO is always like, don't say you're going to pass through 100% of the money because, we have costs. It's like, okay, fine. Like if our lawyers, we have to pay our lawyers, if we have to pay our processing fees, fine. Like we'll cover our costs. But really the philosophical intention is to negotiate on behalf of writers and pass all of that money back to the writers in whatever way is possible. And I think that's still kind of the how to assign credit for the purpose of compensation is also an unresolved issue. But however it gets resolved, we want to support that.
And I know that probably a long ways away from being a reality, but is the idea that eventually there will be like a dashboard? There will be enough transparency for a writer to see, okay, here was my traffic, here is what AI took, here's what the platform's taking, here's what my take home is. What level of kind of transparency do you have in mind?
This is, I think, where it will go. I think because all the pressure is to go this way, is that we're going to learn a new term, and the term is inference, which is, it's not how many times do people see your writing cited in an AI summarization and then they clicked on it, which is, I think, is really common. We actually get a lot of traffic that way these days. But it's how many times was your writing used in the generation of something AI related.
Interesting.
That each time that happens, that's an inference, and the AI companies are probably they would have to provide that information
if they even know it, right? Because sometimes the Gen AI can be a black box, right? Well, we put all this data and all this shit in there, and something comes out, and even the experts aren't exactly sure of the exact alchemy of how the inputs become an output.
I think this is what it's for them, it's a competitive situation, right? And we want to create a situation where they have to compete on being as creator friendly as possible. So I believe, for example, that Google will be able to do inference based. And so if that's true, then other people kind of need to follow, or the creators won't work with them. And that then, it's like the quality of their AI is dependent on access to these creators. If we can create that situation, then probably we will end up with inference as just table stakes for these AI companies.
To a world where if we don't get these incentives right and there is less human writing out there, how concerned are you about the possibility that AI will be kind of generating more AI and being trained on AI, and we have this kind of like this circular race to the bottom? Is that scenario? How troubled are you by that scenario?
Why would I be troubled? I mean, I would say it sucks to be them. Like if they don't come to the table and they fail, that's on them. I think what you're kind of talking about, some people call the dead internet theory. It's that like all the value will get diluted from the internet. But I think it'd be more accurate to say the dead public internet theory, and that people will still be on the internet. They'll just be in these private communal spaces. And, the more we build for that world, the more we think, oh, we always should have been here. Like this just like, as it feels better, and actually people write more. And it's funny how it's so hard to predict these major sea changes on the internet, because on day one of this AI era, writers were thinking they were going to be replaced. But we're actually seeing a writing renaissance in two ways. Like writing is now the universal programming language for AI-enabled apps, right? Like you write to give your preferences, your prompts. Everything you've written is factored into how they personalize the results. And then as people move to more private spaces, suddenly they're realizing again how much they have to say. And so like for the thing that I care about, which is helping people write more, I'm like, that we're in a renaissance. It's great. Like nothing could be better. And if the AI companies succeed or not in this renaissance, is like only mildly like intellectually interesting to me.
As the bulk of my journalism career has been writing, this is music to my ears, so I
Yes.
love it. You, speaking of writing, you wrote a really thoughtful, nuanced piece on Medium a few months ago or recently about how your stance on AI has evolved over the past couple of years, or how Medium's stance has evolved. Can you kind of share the top takeaway or two from that piece? And then I'm very curious of what the reaction, how you experienced the reaction to that. The reason I ask is I think like people far too often in this space, people are AI good or AI bad, right? And you had a far more nuanced take, acknowledging the ways that you kind of realize, AI can be helpful as a tool for writers, and you've incorporated that reality into your thinking. I'm wondering, have you been, was there a backlash to that? I'd love to hear about kind of what that's been like for you.
I wouldn't say backlash. I would say there's a learning curve. And the way I've been trying to think of it myself and explain it to people is I think we're in the second wave of the AI era. And in the first wave was a technology hype cycle bigger than anything we've ever seen ever, right? And I think it was appropriate to have a really Boolean response. It's like AI good or AI bad. And we were like I was early and vocal for like an early vocal AI hater. But I also knew, having been through these hype cycles before, that a lot of times there's a second wave where you finally start to learn how and why is this helpful. So if the first wave was trying to replace humans, of course I was against that. I think that's dumb. And I don't want that. And I like being human. And I like other people being human. Like, of course, I'm going to have a strong reaction to that. But then as people start to learn, well, where can it be helpful? When can it be helpful? How can we use this to elevate people rather than to replace them? That's that second wave that now I think we're part of. And kind of like concretely, like we're redoing the Medium editor to include AI assistance. And it's has nothing to do with doing the writing for you and everything to do with keeping you in a flow state as a writer. And that's a piece of it. And I think the other piece, which you're calling the reaction, is you have to then go build up some trust that, oh, there is actually something useful and helpful. And this isn't just another way to threaten this thing that you love doing. And I'm experiencing this inside of work where we're more likely to use an AI bot for something. And it's never to replace a person. It's more to augment them or to mediate something. And so this is one of the ways in which there's kind of an AI renaissance, like a writing renaissance related to AI is now you can write as much as you want. And you know that an AI could summarize that for your reader. So an actual literal example is, like, we like to do podcast interviews like this. I just like to talk to people. I learn a lot by the questions that I get asked. And so we have all of this documentation and notes for like 2 years of doing this. I can't read all of that or remember all of that before I show up. And so we have an AI bot that like I chat with before I show up. And it's almost like a to-do list of like, Tony, remember this. Try to avoid this. And now you're going to ask me, what am I avoiding? But, like all of these, like just to like help threaten me, right?
Yeah.
And so essentially it made the writing that we do more valuable because we're able to transform it instantly, right? And when I first raised that, like Amy, our head of comms, was like, trying to get rid of me. I was like, no, I'm trying to make you so much more valuable, right? And then the learning curve there, and this is true every time I've been through this particular learning curve, it's about a day. Because once you get past the initial reaction, you realize like, oh, now I can do more. And so it's like Amy writes more now because I, at least for, as one of the consumers of her writing, I read more. Or I use what she writes more because I have this way of saying, like, hey, you're going on the Jeff Wilser podcast. Remember, like, these are some things to keep in mind. And I think that's pretty exciting, and it kind of represents the humans first type of software development that I like to be a part of.
You beautifully channeled something I feel in my bones. And I also, I talk to CEOs and talk to companies. I try and champion that idea of, hey, you can use AI to help humans do more and help
Yeah.
humans be more human as
Yeah.
opposed to just cutting costs and slashing, right? Using AI to expand, not subtract.
Yeah.
So I co-sign all of that.
Yeah.
You also, in that post, something interesting that that you did some surveys, you found that more than half of Medium readers are using AI tools in some capacity. If I got that right, what were some of the surprising ways people are using AI that you found? And you find either writers or readers or editors? What are some of the most common and interesting ways folks are using AI?
The first one, and we're really lucky to have an international team inside of Medium, because that's the first one that I heard inside of the team was like English is my second language. I have something to say. Like, we actually have one of the top most famous iOS developers in the world works for us, but he speaks French originally. And so his blog posts are so well received by the community of iPhone developers. But to articulate what he's trying to say, it's helpful to have an AI, improve that writing. And a lot of people who are more literature focused are really resentful of the AI improving your writing, because the challenge they've put to themselves is the wordsmithing of it. But a lot of people are writing to communicate. And I think that was a perfect example of Tomas on our team is better able to communicate because of that. There's so much of just a research project. The idea that you can just keep asking questions and accumulate all your research just in one place. I don't know what your experience is on ChatGPT, or we use that in Claude, that there's so much, I'm planning a trip, or I've got a new product, I need to pick a name. I don't a million things like that, that are really helpful. And then once you're done with the research, hey, you can do something more with it. And then little things. Honestly, I think AI is a better thesaurus than a thesaurus. Because going by synonym is weird. What I actually want is vibe. It's I need a word in this vibe.
And then give it context too. You can't tell thesaurus, I'm writing an article about shoemaking trends over the years, right? But you can tell it that in ChatGPT, and it will churn out the right words. Yeah.
I'd say one other thing I think has been really interesting is I'm running into people who self-describe or are clinically ADD or lightly ADD. And you think about the writing process for them, which is every time they take their hands off the keyboard is an opportunity for procrastination, right? And it's so I think about all of the times in which I need to go look up a citation. So it's I'm writing something. Now I got to go Google for the link, find the link, bring the link back to what I'm writing. That's an hour-long task for me a lot of times, right?
And your flow is shattered. Yeah,
right. And the flow is shattered. That's maybe the number one thing I use an AI assistant for right now is highlight a paragraph and say, we wrote about this on the Medium blog in 2017. Find the link and add it. And so I don't feel replaced when that happens. I feel saved.
To that point, you have Medium has an AI policy for writers that, as I understand it, distinguishes between AI assisted and fully AI generated content. And I'm guessing this is very tricky subject. It's tricky to kind of I'm probably not binary, right? There's probably some middle grounds. How do you think about drawing the lines, and how are you identifying when folks run afoul of this? How is your team navigating that tricky area?
You have to go to first principles and almost ignore the technicality of the AI-ness of it, because it's very hard to prove AI. If you have an AI detector, it always fails if you take that AI-generated content and run it through a humanizer. So the people who do AI-generated content have all the tools they need to beat your AI detector. And so you can say we're doing this because we're in the AI era, but that doesn't mean you're looking for AI stuff. What you're actually looking for, that's the first principles, is like writing that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the ways that we can tell that someone is generating a lot of AI is that their personal story changes. So it's like one day they've got a daughter, one day they're an uncle, one day they're like they don't have any kids at all, one day they're in high school, and it's like, oh, like individually each of these pieces read as very human, deeply human, gripping even, right? But then you read the through line and you're like, oh, this is all made up. Great.
Yeah.
Like, so we kind of differentiate between like, is Medium a place for you to publish whatever you want? Fine. But then the bar for we will distribute it to readers is higher. And the bar for our partner program where we pay a subset of writers is even higher than that. And so for us, it's to kick someone out of the partner program and say, hey, we're just not going to pay for this. It's a pretty easy for us to tell that it's just not worth paying for, which is related to it. This was probably AI generated, but we don't have to prove AI generated. We just have to prove why would anyone pay to read this, and only prove it to our own standard, right? So that's where we've landed. I think a lot of people kind of have to land on. You can never really prove that it was AI generated, but you can take kind of a qualitative view of like, is this useful? And hey, good news. This is another way in which humans are elevated because humans are really good curators of this stuff and we use them heavily.
You mentioned that we're in a writing renaissance, which again, music to my ears as a writer.
Good news.
I'm guessing though, even if that's true, I'm guessing it's not quite a renaissance of people making a full-time career as a writer.
Well, this is where I might give you bad news because you want to you have made a career as a writer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
While it might be a wonderful time to write to your friends and read their writing, I'm guessing this is not boom times to, if you're a 25-year-old aspiring writer, I'm going to spend the next 30 years making a living by writing articles and Medium posts and so on. Like, I just want to be careful about distinguishing between perhaps in a renaissance vocationally for writing, and then what advice do you have for writers and aspiring writers and professional writers?
Yeah, I might get on my soapbox a little bit.
Please.
Here, but let me first just say, I apologize, but it's not our purpose in life to make professional media happen. Like, we love professional media. We support them. We think Medium is often a great source for them. But the thing that got me excited about the internet is not that. It's the idea that we get to hear from everyone else finally, right? And so that's Medium's purpose. And so we get asked this question, but we just got to be honest. Like, that's not our purpose. It doesn't mean it can't happen.
Yeah.
Just, we're not going to be your savior. And there's nothing antagonistic about it. It's just not what we woke up and got out of bed to do. The other thing that's more of my soapbox is there is a fad on the internet of telling everyone that they can make a living as a writer or as a creator. And I just think that there's an important thing that's being left out of that fad, which is that while there may be a somewhat emerging, very difficult creator economy that might be at risk from this AI era, or might not, who knows, there is also a different economy that's often forgotten, which is the expert economy. The people that technically make the most money on Medium are people writing about their job for readers who also have their job or want their job. That has always been the most commercially viable writing ever. And I say I used to work for a technical book publisher, O'Reilly, back in 2003. So like all the way back to 2003, I would say that's like where the most money is in writing, because it is like people are hungry to pay for that information. And a lot of the ways though that you get paid is you get hired, or you're more successful at work because people want to work with you, or you go independent and you're a consultant or a contractor or a coach. And like writing for the purpose of developing a portfolio, that's what I would call the expert economy. And I would say, like, if you were right on the middle, if you were on the fence between the two, odds are you would be happier in the expert economy. Pays more, way more lucrative, feels less like a treadmill. Like a lot of people end up kind of burning out of the creator economy because it's a treadmill. So it's not to say that the dream of being a full-time creative is a bad dream. I just wish we could be like more honest about what your actual options are. Okay. Now I've not solved your problem of you paying your mortgage by being in professional media, but it's like, that's kind of the slice of the answer that medium is.
I think it's a great soapbox. And actually, I agree. It's important to give that splash of cold water. I try to also, when young writers approach me, I'm like, I don't have the best news for you. So
I've heard it's very hard.
So no, I think your comments make sense. It definitely, so whether it's a writing or professional renaissance can be debated, not up for debate. Medium's renaissance. It's been truly financially, business-wise, creatively, a great year or two for you guys. My understanding is that you first became profitable in August 2024. Fact check me if I'm wrong there.
Yep.
And hit 1 million subscribers. So what, in your mind, most explains this turnaround? What did you guys stop doing? What did you start doing more of to get here?
I think there's a stereotype of the second CEO as sort of a mercenary. And I feel like I'm able to do two things, which is I did come in with just the, like, here's what a business is, and we're going to run it like a business. And we're going to look at the costs, and if that cost is not making us money, we're getting rid of it, right? And that takes a lot of hard decisions. There's a lot of living in a spreadsheet, which is weird for me because I'd rather be living in a text editor writing. But, a lot of it was that, like, hard business decisions. But I did it because Medium is my favorite app on the internet. In fact, I got the job because I was probably Medium's number one power user. Some huge percentage of traffic on Medium was going through publications that I ran and writing that I was doing. And I got into that position because I just enjoyed it so much. And so by kind of knowing the nuts and bolts of running a business and having the freedom to do that, I feel really grateful for having been given that opportunity. That then I'm blessed by being able to champion writing, which is, like, that is the Medium ethos. Like, let's make a simple, beautiful place for people to write. And now that we're financially stable, profitable since August 2024, we can start to expand into other ways to help people write and just, get better and better, kind of perfect this space for as many people as we can.
Final question for you, Tony, kind of bringing it back home to where we started with the idea, as you put it, evocatively, this drama we are unfolding between the AI companies who are kind of hoovering up all this data. We have the creators, publications, when they protect this, and it's kind of, no one knows right now. It's up in the air of what the solution will be, what the courts will rule, how it'll shake out. So you are free to say whatever you'd like, given no one knows. Give us a prediction. How do you see this drama unfolding in time frame of your choice? 1 year, 5 years, dealer's choice.
This is like kind of my brand new position that I haven't even really totally run by the board, because I think everyone, and I would say including the advisors around Medium, tend to think in these extremes. It's like we're going to go from one end to the other end and, like, someone will win. And what I see happening is that there's going to be this balance point. So if you say the question is, to what degree is AI generated writing going to replace human writing? There's a lot of powerful forces at play. And in between all of those forces is going to be this balance point where the AI generated writing can get no better. And the human generated writing has a stable foothold. And the thing that I think of as an example of this, which is that search results on Google in the pre-AI generated era got worse and worse. I don't know if it felt that way to you, but it's like, oh, I'm looking for a cooking recipe. Now I've got 50 paragraphs to read before I get to the ingredients. It's because it was so important to swamp Google with like to game it, to like
drives me
the
crazy.
search engine,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Right. And it got to the point, this is almost like the most unlikely event ever, which is that Reddit became the go-to place to search. They're like, I can't trust Google. I have to go talk to some real people and say what real people are saying. So people started leaving Google and just searching Reddit directly. And I think that exact same thing is going to happen with AI generated search, where it's sort of trust but verify is the balance point, right? Where you're like, well, it gave me an answer, but it's kind of generic. And a lot of times it's not true. So I need to go find an actual source. And so the sources have to exist. And if they disappear, it means the AI generated results actually get worse, which creates more opportunity for the sources to come back. And so you just you got that interplay, and eventually you're going to find kind of an equilibrium. And that's what I'm looking for. And I don't think it's that search traffic goes to zero. Like this would be a business question that's put to me, like how much will search traffic drop at Medium, and what does that mean for our economics? It's like it drops for everyone, but it doesn't go to zero because there has to be an equilibrium. Otherwise, the logic of it just doesn't make sense. You can't have AI without source material, and you can't have the source material be public without traffic and compensation. So by definition, there has to be some equilibrium in there.
I love this dynamic. We should coin it Tony's equilibrium, right? This is I feel like this framework is very commonsensical, and it doesn't fall trap to the kind of false binary of it's all one way or the other. Tony, I so enjoyed this. Congratulations to what you've accomplished at Medium. You've had so many thoughtful insights. Thank you for sharing this. And I appreciate the nuance you're bringing this conversation. Really enjoyed, sir. Thank you.
Well, I mean, if you're trying to coin a term after me, then I have to also be quite grateful. So thank you for having me. I think we had a great conversation. Hopefully it was useful for people too.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it. Thanks again to Tony Stubblebine, CEO of Medium. And thank you to our brilliant new producer of this podcast, Jasper Chua. Jasper, thank you for all of your work and helping professionalize this and dragging me out of the Stone Age. And thank you to you, dear listener. If this is your first time at AI Curious, please consider subscribing. We're at all the usual platforms, including YouTube, thanks to Jasper's excellent videos. Rate it 5 stars, send to a friend, comment on YouTube, hit me up at Jeff Wilser on Twitter and X, all usual platforms. Thanks so much, and see you next time.